Oh, there's the. Oh,
What's happening?
I don't
What is
know.
happening? What did you do?
I didn't do anything. I didn't.
How did that happen? Oh, it's because I went like this. Oh my gosh!
Ahoy, and welcome back to another Bonfire Chat, episode 14. Today we're talking about Lords of the Fallen. How are you doing today,
You
Sir
got it.
Lumber?
Oh, doing wonderfully. I'm repping the praise the sun
Oh
right
no, I
now.
didn't
You know,
didn't even think to do that.
I didn't even tell you you should wear it, but yeah, I
Yeah.
had to be in the spirit of the Souls-like games. So I'm ready to talk
And the
some Lords
spirit
of
of
the
the
Fallen.
season by the looks of your background.
Yes, yes. I
So,
yeah got the tree up in the office for some reason because our current apartment does not allow for a tree to fit in like the living spaces like out elsewhere. So this is where it is this year.
yeah.
So
Oh, Dark Souls and Christmas, a lot of the same views and
oh,
like overall themes.
lots of similar vibes. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Dark Souls today. We're here to talk about
Oh,
a Dark Soulsy game today.
very soulsy. Yes.
Lords of the Fallen. What does it come out in October? I think.
Yeah, October 13th. I think it was on Friday the 13th. Real
Oh,
spooky.
very spooky.
So
That's kind of
yeah,
fitting for it. So
yeah,
I guess to get it out of the way, something that if you may have heard this game in the back of your mind roughly 10 years ago. Um,
yeah,
that's because this game is a sequel to a game of the exact same name of like a
correct.
similar like go bout genre. They try to
Yeah,
do a
yeah.
this is a
I
this
think
is
it
a
was one of the
Souls game. They're trying to make it like a
yeah.
Dark Souls game, but
2014, the original Lords of the Fallen. I'm pretty sure I can confidently say that was like one of the first Souls-like games because at that
yeah,
point we'd had, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2. I think that's it, and Bloodborne soon to follow. So yeah, there weren't many of this genre yet. But
yeah.
yeah, it's a weird naming thing. We were just talking about beforehand. Like I'm not sure why they did it this way, but I think it started off as like a numbered sequel, and then they added a the on the front, and then they
Yeah.
dropped the, and now it's just the exact same name, Lords of the Fallen. So
Yeah.
okay, I don't know. I feel like studios have a real hard time rebooting or like reigniting like series that have been like kind of dormant for a while. They just don't know what to do. So they're like, oh, just call it the same thing. Just call it the same thing. It's like, well,
Yeah.
put it. Why are they so afraid to put a number on the end? Like it's okay. So,
To be fair though,
yeah,
if they the number would have been one thing, but if they tried to do like a subtitle, Lords of the
yeah,
Fallen's already like a corny aggressive name. If they had a
yes,
subtitle, it'd be even more corny and
yeah,
aggressive. Like
yeah. You're already 4 words in to
yeah,
that, so like, you
Lords
don't
of the
have much.
Fallen,
Yeah,
the, the saving the anyway,
saving
I
the
could think
beacons.
saving the beacons. Yeah. Oh, we'll get into the
yeah,
beacons.
yeah,
But,
yeah. We'll get to the beacons. Yeah, but yeah, off the from the start, it's already kind of a goofy name and I guess development history there because it's been a
yeah.
while. It's been 9 years, so I don't know if
So
anyone expected or asked for another one of these games, but
hey,
I
I'm
didn't
glad they
play
did.
it.
I'm glad they did. It was a pretty fun game.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what we're looking at is basically a high dark fantasy. Um,
yep,
it is a Dark Souls game. They have a lot of the
yeah,
same UI, a lot of the same mechanics, a lot of the same
yep,
design ideas. Similar to how earlier this year Lies of P was a Dark Souls game
yep,
with in that world. This is another one of those. They've played the games. They
yep,
emulated a lot of the same ideas and
yep.
mechanics, but kind of put their own
Right.
spin on it. I guess the biggest thing this game can claim, biggest mechanic it can claim, is it has two realms going at all times. That's that
Yeah,
next
you can
gen
transition between them. Yeah, yeah,
that
it's like
next
that
gen
Ratchet and
stuff
Clank
right
Rift
there.
Apart thing where it's like it quickly flips the environment on you and introduces new things and the PS5 super fast SSD load times, blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess that is the biggest mechanic it can tout is like setting itself apart from other Souls like each because Lies of P has had its own thing. Every time a Souls like comes out, they try to. I feel like they have one thing,
you gotta
maybe
have a
two,
hook,
that they try to
right?
like. You got to have a hook to make it's like okay. Here's, maybe they know deep down that like which I don't. I'm not saying this game is bad, but they know it's not going to hit the highs that From Software games do because they just are on another level. So it's like you have to have something else. What else is going to pull me in to make me not just go play a From Software game
Yeah.
instead of this one. So yeah, the transitioning between the Umbral realm, or like the land of the dead, I guess.
Yes, so
You have
you
like
are
a
a
lamp.
you are a lamp bearer, and the like the regular world is called what, Axiom, I think it's called.
Yeah,
It's like the
yeah,
Axiom realm, just the
right. So
normal
it's like
place.
standard world of the living. Yeah,
But you having this umbral lamp, which is given to you at the beginning of the game, it allows you
yeah,
to either on your own volition, or when you die, you are sent to the umbral realm, which is like
yeah,
the dark world version of like
yeah,
the regular world. It's
yeah.
got like a different vibe. It's like it looks different. It's like dead and rotten, and there's like
Very
extra stuff
spooky.
in there.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but
from there's a layer to it from an exploration standpoint. When you go into the Umbral realm, there's like new pathways opened up, items to find, harder enemies. There's like constantly respawning enemies, which is really annoying. But
yeah,
also like the mechanic from like, um, when you die and you're forced into it. Think of anyone who's played Sekiro. When you die, you get to choose to resurrect. Even though this is forced upon you, you don't get to choose whether you do it or not.
yeah.
But yeah, it's like a second chance. Like and you can even if you die and get forced into the Umbral, and like exploring a level, there are these little like icons hidden throughout that can pull you out of it back into the world of the living, so you can kind of like reclaim your
Well, you're like little
your
mini
second
checkpoints
chance.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool in that sense where you're not down on the first death. So
Yeah, so
yeah,
you can choose to send yourself to the Umbral, whether you want to just
right,
explore or like you
right,
technically you get like slightly more like experience points if you're fighting down there. But generally,
right.
you don't want to be there because it's just it's harder, it's more dangerous, and overall, it's just kind of an oppressive, sad vibe.
It's just
Um,
uncomfortable. Yeah,
yeah, so you can send yourself there. You can't choose to take yourself out unless you find one of these little mini checkpoints that are
yeah.
um,
Or if you rest at
scattered
a
about.
bonfire
Or if, yeah,
or
if you rest at a
yeah,
bonfire, yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there's a good balance between like um, there's really good items in the Umbral, but they're
right,
guarded by pretty spooky, creepy enemies that are like
yep,
walking around the item. And if you're in
yep,
the Umbral, you only get a second chance. You have one chance because if you die, you
right,
die.
right, right,
And then there's also some forced exploration in the Umbral where it like makes
yep,
you go there.
right,
But
right,
normally in those situations, in situations where the game forces you to go there, it's pretty good about letting you come back out
right.
right after getting through the challenge.
Right. And sometimes you can even use the lamp to just like take a peek in the
Yeah.
umbral. You don't have to like go into it fully. And if you're just like shining the lamp, you can like reveal a pathway and you can like walk on it while you're shining it. So you don't have to like fully commit to going in there and then finding a way out. And then so it's that
Yeah.
risk reward. And like you
I
said, there's like a
like I like
multiplier.
I like the take a peek idea. It was
Yeah.
cool, but also I feel like the game like was struggling a little bit more when you had to like load both of the realms at the exact same time. It was like
Yeah,
a
for
little
sure.
more performance demanding. And also,
Yeah.
when you take a peek, anything that like comes into your peek window can like
Yeah.
grab you and pull you in,
Right.
which that was
You're
always
not just looking at
frustrating.
it through a window. It's like when you have it up, you're like opening a portal,
Yeah,
basically.
portal
So if there's an
basically. Yeah,
enemy there that's only on the other side, it can see you and it
yeah.
can hit you. And if it hits you, it pulls you in.
Did you
So
ever
yeah,
did you
there's
ever do that and then like drop your lamp real quick and then the enemies like you could hear their swipes around you?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And there were certain enemies where I think like there's like these Grim Reaper dudes with like dual scythes. I feel like if they saw me, they could still hit me on like their first swing, even if I like put the lamp away. Like
yeah,
I would literally see their blades like
yeah.
whipping through the air. And I don't know if that hit me, if it would trigger the same way, but yeah, um, yeah. So it's kind of cool thing. It's like flexing the power of the PS5. Even though, like you said, there was noticeable performance stuff. Issues I had throughout the game, but related to like frame drops and stuff. But it's a cool mechanic. That's the hook. This is the thing that makes it different.
I really like the mechanic. What I didn't like was just this game is already even in Axiom in the regular living realm. It's already like very oppressive and like it already is dark fantasy.
Yeah.
When you go to the
Yep.
Umbral, it's just like it's like twisted, sick, awful,
Right.
rotten
Right.
eyeballs in the wall stuff. And there's like
Right.
babies crying in the background and like
Yeah. There's like this
shrill
oppressive,
noises.
yeah, like this ambient droning
Yep.
noise that's
Yeah.
just constantly in your ears. And I like to play PS5 with my headphones a lot, my
Yep.
headset. And it's just like in your ears, just like For I don't know why they made babies cry, but then like a droning, like moaning sound of
Yeah.
like the dead, and then
Like
there's constantly spawning
maybe
enemies,
it's
and
good.
you're also on like a time limit. We didn't
Yeah.
talk about that.
Oh yeah,
There's a
time.
timer
Yeah.
basically, and like after a certain point, a really hard enemy spawns that you almost can't kill unless you really
Yeah.
try really hard.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's all this working against you, but it is like half the game is what they
Yeah.
want it to be. It's like you're spending half your time in there, you know.
Yeah. So like it's the design of it is very effective in making me not want to be there. It was very oppressive, and it was like scary. I want to get out of there. So it did the job well. But like you said, it is like half the game. So half the game, I was like, I don't want to be where I'm at right now. I want to go back to the world of the living.
Yeah. So effective atmospheric design, but ineffective, like make game fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is still a video game. It's not all about. Because if I was watching a movie, that'd be one thing. But like I have to interact with this and enjoy myself. So you don't want to make it overly oppressive to where it's like, okay, now I don't want to experience 40% of the game because of and find things that are valuable and all that just because it's like that it's not fun to be in. So it was like a tough balance. I would be running through areas while I was in the Umbral, just picking up what I could and then get out of there as fast as possible instead of like
towards the back half of the game I stopped.
like the rest of the game.
The first part of the game I was exploring the Axiom realm and then going to Umbral and exploring that, and it was very tedious because I was basically exploring every area twice, and one of the areas I didn't like. And the back half of the game I was like, I'm just gonna play in the regular realm. If I'm forced to the Umbral, okay, and then I would just look up some items and go back and get them if I needed them. Because I just did not want to be there.
Key things, there were upgrade materials essentially that those were probably the most valuable thing to get.
And they're only in the
Umbral realm, and they're only there. There are some weapons probably and some other like little item drops you could get, but like the most important ones were the upgrade materials. And after I got a bunch of them, which allowed me to heal more and stuff, I just didn't care. I mean, by the end of the game, I just stopped trying to look for them really because it's like it's already oppressive enough, like you said, like in just the base game. So I don't need an extra level of stress. But
so you mentioned upgrade materials. I guess we can touch on people who haven't played Souls games. Basically, you have a healing item that's like renews every time you rest at a checkpoint. In this game, it's called a vestige. So a vestige is a checkpoint. It revives all enemies, and you get all your healing back. Okay. So you've got your healing item, and then the upgrade items you were referring to as you can give to an NPC, and they'll give you more healing items. They heal more.
Right. Yeah.
The other things you're upgrading in this game is generally just you have stats, health, stamina, magic attacks, different kinds of magic attacks, and then you have like strength and dexterity, which is like big weapon, fast weapon, kind of the general idea. So killing enemies gives you vigor, which is like a currency.
A health stat.
In all the other Souls, and a lot of the other Souls games, vigor is like a health stat, and you get souls or runes to level. This game, vigor is the currency, and what do they call the health stat? Was it just?
It was vitality, I think.
Vitality, yeah, they did a lot.
Yeah,
vitality is another word they've mixed around a lot in all the Souls games, but this isn't a Souls game. But you can tell
in other Souls games, there's been vigor and vitality.
Yeah,
I think maybe it was Dark Souls 2 or something. And they need to standardize that.
All these, it's funny. All these games, even FromSoft themselves, they're like they have this like a jumbled. They have a hat, and they're like, "What is the health and endurance?" And it's like, it's called vitality in this game, and they all just mess around with that. It's not standardized. You just know the top stat's health, the next stat's endurance. Basically, all the games. But,
Right.
But you level up with these this currency you get from killing enemies or from selling items or whatever you might be. And every level up, it takes more currency to get the next level. But
one thing for anyone who's played a single Souls game.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I liked about this game, though, speaking of the levels, was they felt like they mattered more. And I don't want to dig into another game that we're not talking about, Lies of P. But in that game, all weapons you could use from the start. You could just use the weapons, and that was probably a more player-friendly option. Get weapon, you can use weapon. In this game, it follows a more traditional, like FromSoft mechanic where I've got a big sword. I want to use big sword, but you have to have a certain stat to even wield it properly.
Right. I
Um,
like that more. It feels like
I
I'm getting rewarded for investing in
I,
specific
I
play
do
style.
I do
So
like it more.
yeah.
I prefer. It's funny. It's like I prefer them being more harsh on me. Like being able
Yeah.
to use any weapon is like inherently a player friendly thing, but it's more rewarding to use a cool weapon
Yeah.
if I put
Yeah.
stats towards it.
There are ways to make me like, so you say like, yeah, it's more demanding of you as the player, but that is a more satisfying way. There are other ways that
Yeah.
you can go completely wrong with that and make it like unforgiving or just not fun. I'm okay with that, the stat requirement way, because again, it's me investing my resources into a specific play style and now being rewarded for
And
it.
it
Not
makes your
everyone
build
just feels you
feel
start.
more
Yeah,
you, like you're
yeah,
actually
right.
progressing and thinking about it. And really, the level requirements were anything crazy in this game.
No, no, they weren't. They were pretty. I mean, there were a couple of like big weapons or whatever. Like the ones it took you a while to find, and it has like a special name or whatever. But okay, you need like 30 of a stat. Like that's
Yeah.
fine. We've all been there. But yeah, normally it was like 10 to 15, maybe a little bit more. And if you're already investing in that stat, like
Yeah.
you're gonna be able to wield it. But yeah, it was pretty low bar, but it still matters. Like so yeah, I appreciate that mechanic as well.
I guess while we're talking about builds and stuff, what kind of build did you spec out to?
Yeah, so normally it's interesting. A lot of times I'll start these games as like, especially like the fantasy oriented ones. It's like I want to be a knight. I'm going to start as like a sword
Yeah.
and board, and I did
Yeah.
start that way. I quickly realized that shields were not very effective. Like you could see like similar to other Souls games, like what kind of damage they absorb, like what percentage, and the physical damage, which is what you probably are going to be using them the
Yeah.
most for. A lot of the shields, it was just really low. It was like 50% or less. I'm
I
like,
noticed that
okay,
too. I don't even
so
use shields, and I noticed that because, like, in the one thing I know about FromSoft games, even though I don't use shields very often, is you want to find a shield that has like 100% physical damage negation,
right.
and
Right. You
all
want that in
these
your
were
back pocket. Yeah.
like middle of the road, like 50 and
Right.
lower, like something like that. There
Right.
was
Yeah. So I dropped that and I was using like short swords pretty much the whole game. So I wanted to be quicker. I noticed in this game that they do a pretty good job of making you feel fast. So I was like, okay, I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to do like more. The stat is called agility, but it is dexterity in pretty much every other
oh
game.
yeah, yeah,
So I had two short swords. I was dual wielding, which I don't know if I've ever done in any Souls-like game. Which it was really cool because basically I could still block, and the way that they incorporate block and make blocking more interesting in this game is they have a deflect in this game as well, which I'm usually a sucker for that as long as it is uh, incorporated well and it feels achievable. It's not just like I don't want the timing to be too tight. The timing for this felt more like Sekiro, which I appreciate. Like I could get off perfect deflects even while I was dual wielding, and it was cool because the swords had their own damage absorption as well, which I think
oh
I
interesting.
assume it would combine them. Yeah, if like this one does 25%, this one does 25%. Now I get 50 total when I block. And I'm going like this because it's like that. That if I'm using both, I would assume incorporate both stats. So yeah, I just completely dropped the shield, and I was using two swords the whole time, and I was able to move really quickly. But yeah, I mean, I bounce back and forth, probably similar to you seem more like you just go for a big bonker build,
I've been
more recently,
devolving.
but
I've been
I kind of go
devolving
back
as
and
of late.
forth.
I
Yeah,
used
so I
to
was doing like an agility build.
the first few Souls games I played. I was always like I like to go quality a lot. Like I would like
Yeah,
I would go like a big, nice rounded build. The last
yeah,
like three games, man, I've been devolving. I'm like, I'm gonna do something different this time, and then I get a
yeah,
cool big
yeah,
weapon. I'm like 30 points into strength, and just
yeah.
go for it.
I
Just,
think that's how you get the most damage, anyways. Like I think
yeah,
that you're rewarded typically for like investing into one, maybe two stats, and that's kind of what I did. I usually
yeah,
pick a physical stat, and then I'll pick like a magic oriented stat.
yep,
So I picked the magic stats are laid out a little bit differently too. You have like a faith type equivalent,
yep,
radiance, and then you have inferno, which I would say it's like a sorcery oriented, but it's really like just fire magic. That's
yeah.
what it is. You have like
Did you have a
light
heal?
magic
Did
and
that have a
fire
heal
magic.
spell? Did Inferno have a
Not
healing
that
option?
I found. No, I don't think so. The Radiance definitely did, which is kind
Yeah.
of interesting because like normally, well, I don't know if other games have like sorcery builds that also have like healing spells, but anyways, like yeah, I did a little bit of the Radiance at first, so like the faith stuff, but then I leaned more into the fire magic, and then I was doing agility as well. So I had like
Yes, you were
ranged magic
Inferno.
options.
You were an Inferno agility build. I was a
Right.
strength faith build. I went,
Quite opposite. Yeah.
yeah, literally the opposite ends of the road. I just had a big old faith holy sword, and
Yeah.
you were a disgusting deviant fire short sword
Correct.
monster.
Just demon
Um,
worshipping. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
of course. Yeah, like I mentioned, I kind of devolved into that. For the first third of the game, I was trying to be pretty balanced. I was putting like it was like strength, health, endurance, strength, health, endurance. Then I started like kind of learn. Like started. I almost said started learning about faith. I almost started, I started putting
Congratulations.
I started putting points into faith. Because I was like, I need a heal spell. I need. I guess like you start off. I start off with a ranged attack. It was a hand, and you just throw
Right.
grenades, which are basically
Yeah.
like
We
explosive
haven't
jars
touched
at
on
people.
that. You
Yeah.
basically have two hands for two weapons,
Yep.
or a weapon and a shield. But then you have a throwing hand, and you can
Yep.
put like like bow and arrow, or like literally grenades.
Yep.
Or that's where you also equip whatever
Magic.
catalyst you used for your
Yep.
magic, which I actually like how it was divided that way because you're not cycling between your weapon and your magic. That's just
You
locked to
you
L2.
always you
So
always have
yeah,
magic at the same. Everyone, even if you don't want to use like magic or range, you always
right.
have it on L2. That's
Right.
like how the game
I do
works.
like that. I have always,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, it's good to have a ranged option. They want you to in this game because there's like enemies that will
Oh
do
yeah.
range to you, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
like sometimes you want to pick them off from a distance. So I like how they made that very convenient to use your range stuff. They also kind of changed up. So your magic stuff, it's locked to like an FP bar. It's like the blue bar in these games, and each spell uses a chunk of that. But then with like regular types of ammunition, they've made it that kind of a replenishing thing as well. You rest at
Yep.
a vestige or bonfire equivalent, and you get all of your ammunition back. You don't have to like crack the ammunition. That could be for a bow and arrow. It could be for like throwing axes, grenades, like we talked
Yep.
about. And you just find these
Hammers is
types of
one that's just
ammunition.
hammers. It's like little like
Yeah,
throwing
which is
hammers.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a
that's it's cool because you find
hammer
the
bro.
ammunition type. Yeah, it's like
Yep.
you find a spell, but in this case, you're finding the type of ammunition, and then you can just equip it, and that's just what you use,
And
and you
that's the
have
way to
like,
look at it.
you know,
Is there's
yeah,
there's magic, and then there's like the ammunition ranged attacks, and
yeah,
those
yeah,
work the same.
yeah.
They refill automatically. They
Yeah.
act kind of like a spell. They are a ranged
Right.
option.
You have limited
Um,
usages, and you can replenish it with the same kind of item. Like there's like these blue rocks that let you replenish your mana, or you
yep.
have an ammunition satchel, which gives you more of your
Yep.
ammunition. So I think that was actually really smart
Yep.
because, like you said, at all times, any type of player could have a ranged option, and like you're going to be specking into some stats. So I didn't really look closely at the ammunitions. Do those
It
scale
was yeah,
with
like it's
stats?
like strength scaling. The one I used.
Yeah. So that yeah, you're
Maybe like a
immediately like
throwing
you
knife would
have
be a
something you can use.
agility scaling or something. But
Right. I think it's
um,
really smartly done
yeah,
there.
and I'm a hoarder in not just Souls games, but in like video games in general. I'm that guy that like
Yeah.
I get the really good item at the end of an RPG. I'm like I will never use
Yep.
this item because I even if like
Yep.
it's like the last boss, you have to use it now. It's the only chance. Like no, I'm not using
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah. There were items
and
like that where it's like cure all status effects and heal your health. I didn't use a single one. I had like 5 or 6 probably. It's like, nah, I may need that later. So
yeah.
it's
So
like,
like
well,
in Souls games, when like previously I would get a ranged attack like a firebomb
yeah.
or like a grenade
Right.
or a throwing knife, I was like
Yep.
I'm never going to
Yep.
use it because I don't want to have to
Right.
deal with like managing that as a resource. So in
Right.
this game, when it automatically recovered at each rest, that made me
Yeah.
incorporate as more of my playing style a little bit more.
Very
But then
smart. And then you just have the resource for replenishing your ammunition, which you can buy. You
yeah,
can
or
find plenty
find
of
yep.
them. So like, yeah, it was really smartly done, I would say.
But then, as I mentioned, I did find faith, and I started using faith magic.
Yeah.
And I used that mainly because that allowed me to have the ranged spell. Like basically, I was
Yep.
shooting like a faith laser from my hand.
Right.
But I could also
Right.
heal myself, and then when I level
Yep.
up a little more, I could buff my weapon and make it like I could make my sword a giant golden holy sword.
Right.
And it was very cheap. I thought it was a little
It was.
questionably cheap,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
lasted a long time. So it's like there's
Yeah.
no real downside to me always having my weapon buffed.
Right.
So yeah, then I was I was faith, and then I found a big an NPC that wanted to sell me a big sword that scaled with strength and faith, and then I just fully devolved
Yep.
into I'm a big sword faith
Yep.
boy.
Yep.
It was good. It's good. Um, let's see. I guess talk about builds. We can go into kind of like the want to talk about let's talk about like the levels designed themselves, and then we'll get into
Yeah.
bosses after that. Um,
Yeah. So anyone who's played a Souls game knows what to expect. You have, a level leading up to a boss. Maybe there's like a shortcut that brings you back around to the initial checkpoint. There's branching paths to explore. It's got all of that stuff, and then you have the extra layer of exploration with the additional umbral realm, And sometimes it's required, sometimes it's just the good items locked behind it. But yeah, I think overall the
Overall,
level design was good.
pretty. One thing about these games, they're overall, other than Elden Ring, they're pretty linear. Like there's
Yeah,
different ways to go,
yeah.
but it's not like a big open field. It is a
It's well defined areas, and some
yes,
I did notice there was like optional areas. There was paths you could have easily missed in this
yep,
game, like for sure. But once you're in an area, it's like okay, I'm going down this path. It's probably going to eventually dead end, unless it is the critical path going all the way to end the game. It's
yep,
going to eventually dead end at a boss, and then maybe you have another area to go back and explore or something like that. I thought it was good. I mean, I
yep.
know we're saying we're not going to talk about Lies of P, but since it was their Souls-like game right before this one, I do think it's just easy for me to compare. I think it was better than that than Lies
Yeah.
of P was. I like the level
I just
design a
like
little bit
there
more.
was more things you could miss in Liza P. It was
Right,
very
right,
the like hidden areas in Liza P were like I could spot them a mile away, and it was fun to go get
yeah,
it and get the item.
right,
But in this game, in Liza P, there was very little like missable areas, missable bosses.
right,
This game
right.
definitely has the like Dark Souls 3. The first time I played that game, there was whole areas I didn't go to, whole bosses I didn't experience because I didn't
Right.
take this random turn or use find this shortcut that goes into a whole new
Yeah.
section of the game.
Yeah.
That's what this game has. It has hidden sections, hidden bosses, hidden areas. It was fun to go in. It was fun to look for stuff when I wasn't scared to be in the umbral and avoiding it. But
Right.
the actual
Right.
level
Right.
searching itself was well done, and I did like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Um,
Yeah. I had to kind of push you towards a completely optional area, which I didn't
yeah,
realize how optional it was, but it was like a trophy boss and everything. So it was a pretty big, a pretty important area that you almost missed. So
yeah,
yeah,
and
it is good that they
a
had
reason
that.
I missed it is because when I was playing that part of the game, it was early mid game area. The game wasn't quite clicking for me as much because I felt underpowered. I didn't like my build, and it was very oppressive. So I kind of ran through that area. There was like
Right.
normally in a game like this when there's like door doesn't open from the side, you need this key. I'm gonna find that key. In this game,
Yep.
I was like,
Yep.
nope, I'm just gonna come right here.
Yeah. Can I
Um,
keep going this way? Okay, I'm gonna keep
yeah,
going this
yeah,
way.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but I was glad to experience it stuff at the end. That was good. But we talked about here's the negative side. I did like the level design and the layout of the areas. I thought it was good. I thought some of the enemy placements in the areas were
Yeah.
frustrating and annoying.
Yep. Yep.
Namely, something I'm sure we'll both talk about. Ranged enemies were plentiful, and
Yep.
they had good range, and they were annoying. And like, sure, say what you want. Say get good. It good design. It was challenging. It was, but I thought a lot of times it was just annoying. There was
Right.
always one more enemy. There's always one more person throwing something at me. It was
Right.
hard to like balance. Like a hard enemy in front of me, and there's two guys. There's a guy throwing something at me, and there's a dog over there running at me.
Yeah, and there's just
It's
like
just
the basic mob type enemies that are you just get surrounded really easily. And this was
yep,
obviously a thing that people. This isn't just a get good situation because people didn't like it, and the developers responded to this. Past several weeks, they've just
yep,
been rolling out patches that are apparently
yep.
balancing things as far as like boss design, enemy design, all that stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they
I
rolled
still
back
felt
some
like
the number
yeah,
of enemies. I don't remember if it
right,
was only in Umbral or if it was the overall number of enemies, but
yeah. I'm not sure if they
Umbral was
specified,
Umbral
but
was
yeah,
definitely a problem. When you'd go in the
yeah,
Umbral, you talked about earlier. Enemies will spawn. It wants you to get out of there. It wants you to get
yeah,
your objective done, die, whatever.
yeah,
It doesn't want you to hang out there. So the
right.
pressure it gives you is not only that timer, but also enemies are constantly spawning and respawning, and
Yep. And it's
it
just like
was
your basic enemy. It was like the
yep,
basic type of enemies that are spawning, and they're really easy. You two or three shot them, but they're all over the place. And then if you're wanting to explore and you get to like a hard non-respawning enemy, it's like, well, I've got 50 dudes chasing me. It's
yep,
like, how am I supposed to deal with this guy? And then I'm on a timer as well, and
yep.
the god of the undead is going to
They're
spawn
trying to
in five
overwhelm you
minutes.
basically,
Yeah,
and they did a
which
good job of
yeah,
overwhelming me. But that, like I said, it's not. I didn't want to do that. Um,
right, right,
uh,
yeah.
it's a
It's
design
not. You have to
choice.
make a game fun. It is a design choice,
Yeah,
but yeah, we've talked enough probably about how we didn't stay in there for long. It was in and
yeah,
out. And the classic, the word I like to use is hooning. I was just hooning
yeah.
it the
Just
whole
hooning it.
time. And
Yeah,
it's yeah, just sprinting, pick up the item,
yeah.
sprint.
You've run kind of funny in this game. You're like
Yeah, you're very
very
fast.
upright. Oh, you run
It's one of those things.
fast.
Yeah, the game, I think. So performance issues aside, when it comes to frame rate, because that's going to feel like a slowdown. But if the game are running 100% perfect all the time, I do think it feels good. I think
Yep.
you feel fast. I like feeling fast in these games more than like big clunky knight.
lumbering.
Like, oh,
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
swing.
yeah,
Yeah, I like to feel really quick because I mean I'm not toot my own horn here. I think I'm twitchy. I like to dodge real quick. I like to deflect. I want the game to respond to what I want to do very quickly. So like that's why I like Sekiro. It's why I like Bloodborne. So an Elden Ring kind of treads the middle, but in this one, it was interesting because I feel like again the aesthetic of being like big clunky knight in a fantasy world, it's just going to feel slower, but they made you feel faster, and it was like pretty forgiving in that sense. You were talking about how you have your big sword, but it probably didn't feel like big swords in other games. It's what it
yeah.
seems like, right?
Yeah, it was
So
pretty quick overall. Oh, the game was
yeah,
pretty fast paced, I thought. And your
yeah.
roll, you dive across the arena when you roll
You
sometimes.
really do, yeah. It was
Yeah,
like so when you're locked on, you have a quick step, or you can double tap it to dot like do a big roll. And if you're
yeah,
not locked on, you're rolling. And yeah, I
yeah,
got used to it eventually because it's just you do it so much. But yeah, you're diving like you're like a long jumper when you
yeah.
were rolling. It was really funny. But I mean that's not a knock on it. It was just kind of something to get used
Also, I
to.
thought the stamina bar of running and rolling was very forgiving. It like allowed you
Yep.
to you could if you
Yep.
sprinted, not only were you
Right.
running really fast, it would let you run
Right.
forever. You could just run
Right.
for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yep. For
Um,
sure. Yeah. So it made my hooning technique pretty effective
yeah,
because that's like nothing's stopping me. I'm
yeah.
just going.
Yeah, so the game was very fast. But you did kind of mention there a little bit some performance issues, and
Yeah.
more so in some areas than others. Like things would get framey, or like sometimes something that was funny. They try to like put this atmospheric fog in some areas, and it would like
Yeah.
it wouldn't like render properly.
Fully
It would be like
render. Yeah.
glitchy, really pixelated. If anyone's played Ratchet and Clank, the pixelator weapon, it was like I was
Yeah.
walking through a cloud of squares.
A
In this
polygon. Yeah.
otherwise like going for a photorealistic look,
Right.
and then like I'm walking
Yeah.
through like this fog of squares. It was very odd.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the game. I would say the game performed fairly well, but it did have its issues, especially in the later game. Some frame
Yeah. It's
skips. It
weird.
would get a little jerky.
As the game went on, yeah, it went. For me, I mean, your mileage may vary, but like as I got to later game areas, I didn't remember them being like more complicated or complex with the visual design, but I just noticed some frame drops as I got further into the game, and like it did affect me several times when you were on voice chat with me, where I would die on the last hit to a boss, and I noticed a frame skip there. It's like I could have dodged that, but it skipped a frame, and it would do that consistently. It was like it was expecting me to die, and then it does the transition thing where I get the second chance. It's like, well, I would rather just not die.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Speaking, I completely forgot to tell you this. This is not even related to the video necessarily. But what we'd probably call the true last boss of this game, not the actual last boss, but the we killed each other. Like I killed him, he killed me.
You did True Last Boss?
No. I'm saying what like the actual last boss, like
not the final thing, but the second to last thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
funny.
we kill each other, and like
Yeah.
I was sitting there, and like you have a really long death animation in this game. I'm like falling to my knees, and he's falling to his knees. I'm like, come on,
And then pops it.
and then he popped. I died, and then I spawned with all my souls.
Yeah, that happened to me once or twice actually.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like I had a couple boss encounters like that where, and it was you're talking about you were already in Umbral, so it was like your last chance. That
Yep.
Yeah. That happened to me once or twice, and then yeah, that's funny. I don't know. I guess it gave you the. It was a weird like. I guess you got the souls in the load screen, and then you came back with them.
It popped the trophy as it gave me the death screen, which was pretty funny.
Yeah. That's funny.
So let's talk about the bosses. Bosses come in a variety of flavors in this game. There's your typical. There's your actual big story boss. It gets the cutscenes. It gets the big fog door. Or I guess it's like the weird umbral butterflies.
Yeah.
These are bosses that are story related. They'll normally give you a trophy. They'll give you special boss items.
Item. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes they have two phases. Sometimes they don't. Yada yada. I thought all those bosses cinematically were pretty cool. They varied in difficulty. I thought I was having trouble in the early game. I don't know if that was me learning my build more and learning the game. But overall, I thought the bosses were a pretty good challenge. I didn't quite get as frustrated as I did in Lies of P with some of the bosses.
No, same. And it's funny because that was the other side of like player feedback, or it must have been based on feedback, unless they were just
Yep.
like watching people play. But like, I guess they thought the bosses were too easy in some cases, so
Yes.
they patched bosses to be more difficult, more health, more damage.
That was funny
etc.
because when I
So
was reading reviews, a lot of them were like, the levels are hard, the enemies are hard, the bosses are a joke, and I was like, that's
kind of
weird.
like Demon Souls, honestly, in
Yeah,
that sense. That's what Demon Souls was for me.
yeah,
So I don't
and
know if it was exactly the same. Uh, Levels were definitely harder, but not for the same reasons that Demons. I mean, kind of similar reasons, but bosses, not all of them were jokes. Pretty much every
no,
boss in Demon Souls was
no,
a joke.
there were difficult bosses game. I just don't.
Yeah,
I was never fighting a boss where I was like, I hate this so much. I'm trying to think. There might have been like there was one or two that had like weird gimmicks I would prefer weren't there.
same.
I think
Yeah.
the one I'm thinking about, the one in the swamp, the first real
Yep. That
uh,
boss was. It took me a while. Yeah.
your goal of this game is to, as the lamp bearer, to cleanse these beacons that are holding the like the evil god at bay.
Right.
So
Yeah,
there's
that's
five
like
beacons.
that is the one connection it seems to the first game. There was this big nasty evil god that was sealed away, and now it's been like thousands of years, and he's about to escape. And there are these beacon things holding him in place, and they've like lit up with like all nasty red demon energy, and you're going and cleansing each one of them so he doesn't like resurrect.
Yeah, so these
there are
big
bosses guarding
beacons
each
in the
one.
sky, you can see them from anywhere on the map. You can kind of like use that to tell where to go next.
It's really cool, actually. I
is-
thought that was effective.
It is cool. There are bosses that guard these. 4 of the 5 of them, for some reason, one of them didn't.
Yeah.
But but they're like the big story bosses are normally guarding these things. And the first one of those I did, I was probably the one I had the most trouble with because it had a little bit of a gimmick, and the gimmick I didn't.
Right.
I don't really. I'm not a big gimmick boss fight guy unless it's like the whole thing. I don't like when the gimmick is mixed in with also fight a boss. It's like
Right.
if it's either fight a boss, traditional style, or a full gimmick. That's one thing. This
Right.
guy was
I
like,
agree.
he was like, do this gimmick while you're fighting me. It's like, that's too much to handle. That's too
Yeah,
much to.
right.
But-
And I mean, I think with that fight, I mean, we're being kind of vague about it. We don't have to go into full spoilers here, but I don't think the gimmick. Well, depends on what you consider the gimmick in that fight. You didn't have to do it, but it made it easier.
Yep.
But if you didn't, the fight would take a lot longer. And so it was just tedious in multiple ways. So that was one of the ones I definitely struggled with. I'd say there was maybe like 3 bosses that gave me like good trouble. I was on there for like 10, 15 tries, something like that.
Yeah, and some of the end later game bosses that did give me trouble, I felt like it was like, okay, this is just a hard end game boss. I wasn't
right.
There was
right.
there was some frustrating things with I'm saying boss like the big story bosses. There were
right.
NPC bosses and like regular enemy bosses, and some of those would get frustrating for weird reasons. Like there's an NPC boss late in the game. I'm sure you're well aware of, where it makes you fight in like basically box him in a closet. You're in a tiny little spot, and that fight is frustrating because you're in this weirdly small arena.
That just seems like a design oversight to me because like you put we were on like a narrow bridge, but then
we didn't need to fight there. Like there was no reason that we had to fight that person there.
You could have fought in the room in front of it, and there was like it just. You have to design the boss and the arena together. They have to work together, and you can't make it like unfair, or you shouldn't, and not just phrase it as like, oh, just difficult. Like you do better, get good. Like no, like actually make it well designed. But that one frustrated me because the boss had basically the ability to cover the entire arena in some form of an exploding attack. It's like okay, well now, and then what it forced me to do was just hang close to him and keep him from doing that, or if he did, it's like okay, I was close to him, so I dodged it anyways. But there were a couple instances like that where it's like the design didn't like fully work together. And
like a boss I had trouble with in the mid-early game as well was another boss you're fighting on a bridge. This was another flavor of boss where they would introduce an enemy type, like a hard enemy. Like it would be like this guy was called the Ruiner. He's this big demon thing. So fighting him on a bridge, he's the Ruiner, he's a boss. Like, oh, this guy's scary. And I finally kill him on this annoying bridge. And then like you take 30 steps forward, and then that's just a new guy that's just going to start spawning around.
I don't like that at all.
They did that a lot.
Like, either make it a mini boss, like without, or just don't make it a boss, especially if you're not gonna. Like Dark Souls did that, where there was a very early game boss, and then you would go like 30 hours later and like, oh, this is kind of like where these things come from. It's like, okay, I understand why now this is like a standard enemy. You just like gave this enemy to me for the first time, pretended it was a boss, and then threw it in front of me again. It's like, what was the point of like?
And
I don't.
it was
I
a
don't like
lot.
that.
It was like say there's a dozen. I'll call them like there's regular mob enemies that like are pretty
Right.
one or two shots, and then there's like
Right.
a higher level of difficult, more threatening enemies that sometimes will drop items or they're guarding something. So there's like a dozen of
Right.
those. Every one of those
Yep.
was like you're gonna fight as a boss, and then
Right.
like 20 seconds later they're just walking around in the next area.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, I didn't. It kind of took some of that out of it. Took some of the weight of, like you said in Dark Souls 1 when you fight the something demon,
The Capra Demon.
the Capra
Yeah. The
demon.
Taurus
You
Demon
fight,
and the Capra Demon. Yeah.
yeah. So you fight them and they're a boss and it's a big moment. You kill it, and then like you said, like 30 hours later, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is it kind of like gives some environmental storytelling, like where those things are from, why they should have been a boss, why they were scary. In this game, it was just one that was stronger on this
Yeah.
spot, and then there's a dozen of them
Yeah.
around the world. It didn't feel quite the same.
Yeah, again, it was a choice. If that's the way they wanted to introduce a new enemy and make you feel powerful by being like,
And
okay, I just killed like
it,
probably a version of it, more health, more damage, whatever. Like maybe there's kind of like a power trip there, like, oh, I can take this guy out easily. I mean, it's like a confidence booster type thing, but
and
it's not.
realistically,
you do so
maybe
much, like
maybe there was just a thing where it's like we need a boss here, and we
right,
don't
right,
design a whole new boss. Let's just put a strong one of those guys there. Maybe that was like
right,
what actually happened. And sure, I mean that's fine. Like I didn't like those bosses didn't frustrate me all the time because of the actual I'm fighting a boss. It was more like it kind of took the weight out of fighting a boss and seeing him as an enemy quickly thereafter.
right. Yeah, it was the proximity to the boss fight. It's like do it
Yeah.
way later, do it,
Yeah.
and then it's like, oh, I remember that guy. It's like, oh, I bet I can take him on. Like I've gotten stronger since I fought him as a boss, and now it makes sense that he is just like a recurring enemy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I thought enemy variety in this game overall was a little bit of a weaker spot.
Yeah.
Early on, it felt like there was a good amount of enemy variety. That's because
Yep.
you were fighting a lot of the enemies you're going to be fighting the whole time. It's like
Right.
it gave a lot to you up front. Like, oh, there's some good
Yep.
variety here, and it's like, oh no, you're just
Yep.
going to keep fighting those guys
Yep.
the whole game.
Yep.
And
I
that's
agree
with
with that.
mainly with the like the mob enemies, like those guys, like
Right.
the axe guys, the two axes. Those guys were like the
Oh
whole
yeah, those are
game.
all over the place.
The whole
Yeah.
game. The
Yeah.
dogs come in different flavors, but they're the whole game.
Yep. And every
yeah.
Souls game is guilty of that.
Yeah.
No game is gonna I guess because they want to balance, the fact that, okay, I've learned this thing. We don't want to continue to introduce new things to the player, and they're always on their toes. And then, yeah, like you should give me things that challenge me and entertain me, every so often. So I think overall it wasn't terrible, but I think it was probably about the same as like what I would expect from some of these other like
Sure.
Souls-like clones. So yeah.
Yeah. Overall, I think the game had a lot of good things it did. Where it fell short was a little bit. It fell a little short in the performance. It fell a little short in some of the level design, specifically for me with the enemy placement. There's a lot of ranged enemies. It felt kind of spammy at times.
Right. Yep.
There was good rewards for exploring, but also like I didn't want to explore some areas to get those items, and there was a lot of weapons in the game, but also there might have been too many weapons. Like I think I counted at the end, I had like 75 weapons.
Yeah, I was probably about the same. Yeah, and I pretty much stuck with 2 or 3 different weapons that were all the same type, essentially, like single-handed short sword type weapons that I was rotating between depending on the types of damage they did. And once I found what I liked, I just kind of stuck with it. So all of the there was a lot of like basic enemy axe, enemy sword. It's like I don't need that. Like I don't care.
Maybe that's what it was. Is I like the possibility for variety and like trying new stuff. But yeah, that was a great point. A lot of the items were just like basic enemy axe. I'm never going to use that. I'm never going to use that.
Right.
But
Yep.
I did. There's good player choice with the weapons. They have basically every variety of like. There's short sword, long sword, grand sword, or like hammer and grand hammer, and big different sizes of things. And each size basically had each variation of faith, strength, agility.
Right.
They had like a good mix where you could find a weapon for your build somewhere in the game. So that was a good thing. I just thought it was a lot of weapons, and you just kind of light bulbed me. Is because they gave you all the enemy weapons.
Yeah, yeah, and all the enemy armor, which some of the Souls games do as well. Like Elden Ring, most recently with a From Software Souls game, you can get pretty much everything you see on an enemy
Yep.
in that
Yep.
game, and that game is gigantic though. So yeah,
Yep.
yep,
I thought the game had a great loop. It had the Souls loop of explore, get experience, level up, or you can use that experience to buy items because there's NPCs in
right,
the specifically there's a couple roaming NPCs, but specifically the hub area, which is called
mm-hmm.
Skyrest, I think. So I liked going back
Skyrest
to
Bridge.
Skyrest Bridge. Yeah, I liked going back to Skyrest, talking to the NPCs, exhausting all their dialogue. Um,
Yeah,
it seems like they like all or most of them did have some sort of side quest that you could
yep,
progress.
yep,
I don't think I
right.
completed, but like maybe one or two of those because a couple of the people
Same.
died and I don't know where they ended up.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yep,
and a couple of them I think I completed on accident. I don't know.
right. They were just they went concurrent with the main quest line, kind of. Yeah,
But it did a great job of making me. Whenever I would like get through an area or kill a boss and have a lot of stuff, I was like excited to go back to Skyrest and like get the
yep,
benefits of that. Like I'm going to level up, I'm going to buy new items, I'm going to upgrade my weapons, I'm going to talk to all
yep,
the NPCs, see what they had to say.
yep,
The story, I'm not going to say like when the first time I played Dark Souls 3, which is my first real foray, whatever you call it,
yeah.
what's the word, into
Foray. Yeah,
Souls. Yeah.
yeah,
I didn't know what was going on. No
yeah,
idea. It's just like
yep,
there's a lot of environmental storytelling and like vague item descriptions and vague character
right.
talking. Um,
Yep.
but like when you like have someone explain it to you, it's actually really in depth and a very good story, and I
Yep.
like it. This game, I
Yep.
feel like probably has some similar characteristics to that, where
For sure.
I knew
We
the
didn't talk
general.
about something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Something
was
we
just
didn't
saying, like
mention.
generally, I knew kind of like what the main goal was, what was going on, but um, there was like these little like lore bits throughout the levels where you could like look at like what'd you call them, like almost like a vision. You could like revisit something that happened
Yeah,
somewhere.
you had to be in
Um,
the Umbral realm. They were like memories of something
yeah,
that happened, and you would use your lamp to reveal like a past interaction between characters or an event.
and I'm
They would give
sure
you a
I'm
little
sure there's a lot of
account
like really good storytelling there. I just didn't
for
quite
sure.
remember all of it because I've
Yeah,
only played through the game once, and I'm sure I missed stuff.
yeah,
Um, but I'm sure it's ripe for a good Vadi video.
yeah.
Um,
There's
but I
one
thought,
other piece of it that
yeah,
was interesting and kind of strange how it was incorporated, but just like other Souls games, there are item descriptions.
hmm
For a lot of items, half or more of the total amount of like information you could get from that item was locked behind either the radiant stat or the inferno stat. It doesn't tell you how much you need to have to read it. It just says increase your radiance or your
yep.
inferno or both further. And
Cool
there were cases where
idea.
both of us had a bunch of one stat and it still wasn't enough. It's like,
Yep,
okay, that is story lore that I don't know how I'm going to get. I don't know, why do I
yep,
have to invest that much into it? Because now you're telling me to get more out of the story, I have to play a certain way to
yep.
invest into specific stats. So it's just like, it is a cool idea though.
I thought cool idea like that. Like you get this book. It's like the book of sin or some whatever it's called.
Right,
It's
right,
like oh you need more radiance to like fully understand what this is, and like from like
right.
a gameplay perspective that makes sense. It's like okay, my character's specking into radiance, and basically all the magic in this game is radiance or inferno, or the combination is umbral. Not going to touch that,
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
my character would understand this more, so I can get this information if I
right,
pay more attention to radiance. But like you said,
right.
it doesn't tell you how much you need. By the end of the game, I had 40 radiance, which that's a pretty high stat.
I think
Um,
so because
I,
yeah, I mean, and that's probably around the time you pop the trophy for getting to level 100, and by the time
yeah,
you're at the end of the game, it's like okay, unless I made just a quality build throughout, which your build was not, my build was not. It was like 2 stat investments. It's like
yeah,
what was I supposed to have 60 of? It's
yeah,
like
and like
I
I
didn't
would
want to
like
do
to read
that.
this stuff. And also, what if I just didn't
Yeah,
go into magic at all? I can't get any of the
right,
story
right,
or the
right,
extra because like a lot of like
right.
with the way the story is given in games like this, there is a lot of extra details and environmental storytelling from items and like little
Right.
like extra notes. It's nice. I like reading those. And if it just said like if there was like a thing where like maybe it had like tiers, like you need a little radiance, you need a
Right.
hefty amount of radiance, you need a lot of radiance, and like that number was a standard that I like. Okay, I know I need 30 radiance to read anything that
Right.
says you need a lot of radiance,
Yeah.
but it
At
didn't
least at
have
that
that.
point, they're still like it's still kind of cryptic and like oh, you don't have enough. Your eyes aren't opened enough to this. It's not just like, oh, developer saying get 20 of this.
Yeah.
It's like you learn how much it is, but it also doesn't break the the atmospheric stuff. It's
Yeah,
like, okay,
exactly.
I need to be more well developed as a character.
And
Understand this. I need to get to 40 whatever or
if
something.
it let me figure something like that out, that would have been perfect. But what it just said
Right.
was you need more. And
Right.
for me, that was like, okay, well, do I need two more? I'm not going to
Right.
put 10 levels so I can read this
Right.
sword description.
Right. When I can also just Google it. Like,
Yes.
there's
And
all these wikis out there for these games that,
anytime a game is pushing you to just Google it, I think that is,
Yeah.
I want to say a failure of the game, but like preferably they allow me a way to figure that out on my own in the game.
Right.
Because I don't want to look stuff up. I'm not afraid to.
Right.
If I need to find stuff, I would like to be able to experience it in the game. But if I want to read this description and I have no Inferno stat and I got this
Right.
cool end game item, maybe I'll read what the lore implications
Right.
of that item are.
Right.
I don't know. It's like anything. It's a tough act to balance. It's a design decision. I just think it could have been a little more straightforward with kind of telling you how much weight
Right.
was needed. But
Right. Yep. I agree. Yep.
Um,
Overall, I'd say it was a pretty successful attempt at a Souls-like. There are some issues, and it always comes down to balancing. It's like balancing enemy and boss design with like how brutal they are against the player character, and then also how does the game feel.
Yep.
I think aside from performance issues, like I said, it feels good. There were some balancing things on both sides, boss and regular enemy, that needs to be worked out. It's a tough thing to balance. Some people really like it, as the brutal challenge, whether it's truly unfair or not. Some people want a different thing, but
Yeah, and
I think overall pretty successful.
I like this game a lot. I think so. I'm sure, as I've used this phrase a few times, in the grand scale of time, I will replay this game. I do enjoy it. I did like it. There is more for me to experience and learn and see, but it's also a very demanding game, not just from the gameplay, but there's always something going on. You're never really safe. The world feels very oppressive. It's always it's not like a lighthearted, I can play this for 30 minutes and feel happy. It's like, no, I need to lock in and prepare to be sad and angry.
Yeah, talk about a sweaty game. It's a sweaty game, and it's not because it's not in the satisfying way. It's because you go into it and the game's just going to be throwing stuff at you nonstop. And it's okay, well, I know that now, so that's the kind of mindset you have to
It's kind of like how I feel playing nowadays. Like if I want to go play Call of Duty online, I can't just la 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 la. It's I gotta focus. I gotta.
Right.
There's no checking my phone in between. Pausing the game, because you can't pause the game. You can't check a text message. It's no, you put that down. You play the game. And it's and there's a time and place for that. I just think I need a little break from that. I just went from Liza P to Armored Core to this. I need a nice relaxing break. I guess to end this on a positive note, one thing I think they did in this game even better than their inspiration, the multiplayer. We played with it a little bit. We played with it a little bit. Basically we had already both beaten the game, but we wanted to test it out. Multiplayer seems great. Normally in these games, I keep saying these games, in FromSoft games, there's this cryptic, multiplayer is weird. You have to summon people in a certain way, and some places you can only run through an area with them. Sometimes you can only do a boss with them. Sometimes they leave if certain conditions are met. You can't go to other areas. This game, it seemed like you could just play the whole game.
Right.
They die with you. They respawn with you. You don't have to resummon them.
They teleport with you.
They teleport with you. Yeah, in FromSoft games, you can't teleport. If you die, you have to resummon them in. They go through the process again. It's very tedious. This game, it was just you are playing the game with your friend. They will.
Right.
If you die, you don't have to go through another menu and wait another 20 seconds. You just keep playing. I think that was great.
I think is probably the most impressive thing. Is the fact that they wouldn't leave when the host player dies. I thought that was.
It's funny.
I was pretty impressed.
It's funny. We say impressed, but was that ever a good mechanic in Dark Souls? It's almost why is Dark Souls and Elden Ring still doing that? Why are they still making me resummon my friend?
Yeah. It's just a design choice, I guess. They want you to feel, and also there's no like normally like in the FromSoft games, you summon a person in, they have less of their healing items. They're
Yeah.
just a weaker like addition to your experience overall. And I don't even know if there's like concurrent progress. I don't know if we tested that really in Lords of the Fallen.
Yeah.
I guess there isn't
You
concurrent
definitely got
progress.
you definitely got items and souls, but I don't know if you get
Yeah,
like credit for beating the boss. Yeah.
right. Probably not, which that's fine.
Probably not.
But yeah,
And
like
this game was also I don't think there was a currency or an item. I think you just
nope,
multiplayer.
just do it. Yep.
Yeah, and Dark
Pretty
Souls
sure.
and Elden
I think
Ring
there
you
was a
like used to
currency
sort of
for. There may have been a currency for invading. Oh no, there was an item that you could use if you're going to invade somebody that would make your rewards better if you were to win. But to invade somebody, to join in with someone's game or whatever, I don't think it cost anything.
it was
Which
just
is
good
good.
fun old matchmaking. Yeah, yeah. Like there's
Right.
some. I mean, there's something to say with with Dark Souls. Like, oh, I've only got 5 items left to let my friends help me. Do I really want to use it
Right. Right.
here? So it's
Yeah.
like making
Yeah.
you think. But this game is just like, nope. Play with your friends.
Right.
Run around the areas with them, and it worked well. I thought I didn't. I only played on your world for 20 minutes or so. I didn't notice anything um,
Right.
like performance jitters or like
It's just the
latency. Really,
same as
it
yeah,
felt the same.
pretty much
Yeah,
the same with or without a person, which is probably dependent on your own like internet connection and stuff. But
yeah,
like it was good. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think if they made I almost say if they made a Lords of the Fallen 2, but I guess it'd be the Lords of the Fallen 3. If they made another
Right.
one of these
You
games
just
down
really
the line,
neglect that. Yeah,
yeah,
just it's funny because like they did from a story perspective, they did the thing where it's like this event happened, so many years have passed, millennia have passed, and this is kind of the consequences of it. Things are being brought up again. Well, Dark Souls did that, and they just called it Dark Souls 2.
yeah.
I mean, granted, it was less time in the real world between the games. It was probably like 3 or 4 years, maybe not even that. But yeah, it's a
I'm sure it came. Yeah,
strange
but
thing.
the next game they make, if it's in this franchise or not, I will be paying attention. I thought it did a good
Right.
enough job to earn my respect as a gamer. No,
Yeah.
but as a like, I want to play what they have next. If they have DLC,
Right.
I'll
Same
probably
here.
think about it. You know, I want to play
Right.
it.
Right.
I enjoyed my time with it. Really, nitpicks I have are because I'm like passionate and I enjoy these games. So like
Right. Same.
when there is a problem, I'm like, oh, I wish you would have done that differently or better, and it would have been that much more enjoyable of
Yep.
a game. But overall,
Yep.
I did really like the game. I'm glad I played it. I'm glad I wasn't really on my radar until you started talking about it. Like, I
Yeah.
saw a trailer for it like a year ago, and I was like, oh, well, whatever. It's like a CG
Yeah.
trailer. But
Right. I remember seeing gameplay a while back, and I didn't think it looked all that impressive. I didn't like how the character moved. I didn't like. I just assumed it was going to feel bad, but then I got my hands on it. I watched some reviews, all that stuff, and I mean, pleasantly surprised there.
Yep.
So even though I wasn't planning on playing it, especially so close to Liza P, which was just like a couple weeks prior, I'm glad I did. You know, and like yeah, it'll. I don't know if it'll make like the rotation. I would have to have a really
Sure.
clean slate to get back into it, but like that's just kind of how it goes these days, being an adult and trying to play games.
yeah, like
But
I'll
it was
probably
good.
play Sekiro again or Dark Souls 3 again before I play Lords of the Fallen again. But if one
Definitely.
day I'm sitting there, I'm like, what kind of Souls game am I in the mood for? Maybe one day I'll play Lords of the Fallen again.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, even with like I had issues with Elden Ring and like some of the balancing, mainly related to bosses. Like the open world and stuff is incredible, but From Software games, not only are they still the pinnacle, like as far as quality and all that stuff goes. I like. There's also some level of tolerance I feel like I accept, where it's just like, I don't really like that, but there's so much else that's good that's going on in those games. That's like,
Yeah.
I'm just, I guess, much more critical of, non From Software games. That's just kind of they pioneered the genre, so I know they're going to give me better than anyone else can. It's just how it goes. But
And we're kind of an
yeah.
exciting time just this year. I mean, we talked about Liza P several times this episode. Liza P and Lords of the Fallen. If these games came out 5 years ago, they might have been like, "Oh, this is the game of the year from soft style
Right.
Souls." Game.
Right.
Like they're
Right.
developers are catching up. They're
Right.
not at from soft level yet. They're not making Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring quality games in my opinion, but they're getting there. Like I'd probably prefer this game over Dark Souls 2. I know it's a whole different thing there.
Yeah.
It's a whole different
Yeah.
story there as
Right.
to why that game feels different. But as far as
Yep.
Souls-like games, the new ones are getting closer to being at that level where I'm like
agree.
starting
Yep.
to see them as more of a a few years ago, Souls likes. I'm like, that doesn't look great. Now it's like, oh, that looks like that's a
Right.
Dark Souls game. Like that's
Which
the
is
same.
good. You want, like, if this is going to be a well-defined genre, which it almost already is, you
Yep.
need competition from multiple sources pushing everyone forward. You have the front runners, and then you have, everyone else kind of just forcing each other to innovate. And then, it's good. I think I can agree that. And I mean, in the past few years, I've played more like non-From Software Souls-like than previously, because there's games like The Surge and like what's that one, Mortal Shell, that was one that came out recently. I didn't play that one, but there's been other like Souls-likes that
It was like
I've
the
just
Neo
straight up passed
games.
on.
You know,
Neo, I did play those, and Team Ninja is like, I think they've carved a completely their own niche of like
they're kind of on a parallel path.
Souls-like
I almost don't.
yeah.
Like these games,
that's
Liza
high
P,
quality, those games.
Lords of P and Lords of P, damn it.
Lords of P.
Liza
Fallen.
P and Liza P and Lords of the Fallen, they are trying to be Dark Souls. Neo is like they looked at Dark Souls and said that's cool, we're going to do something on our path down that same direction.
They took what they wanted and then made something parallel, similar but different. Those are really good games. You haven't played either of the Neo games.
No, I played Wolong.
Which is Wolong is different in its own right, and the same developer.
That game came out this year.
It did. So yeah, that's crazy. 3 Souls-likes, very different this year that I've played, and I played through Elden Ring again for some reason. So I've had, this is probably the most Souls-like heavy year I've ever had. Like as far as games I've decided to play from beginning to end. So
Same here. But yeah, overall great game. I'm excited about it. Excited about what's next. I'm glad I played it. Any closing thoughts? Anything else for you?
Just praise the sun, guys. Remember to be praising the sun.
Praise the sun.
Yes.
All right.
Very good.
So, thanks for chatting with me, and thank you for watching. Is it rain?
Oh my gosh, it is! What the hell?